Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. Sorry about that last part. Just had to go for a quick second and I stopped the video. So now let's get on with it. So in this game, with Fupalicious, we were discussing how, this e4 square is really important. And in the bird, we get the e5 square, but at the same time, we try so hard on getting our knight to e5 that our e4 square is extremely weak, and I just wanted to again praise our friend Fupalicious for finding this really nice maneuver. So even though the computer does not appreciate it, because there's the move g4, and after bishop to g6, bishop to a3, knight to d6, there's castles, and maybe with F5, I don't know, but computer doesn't appreciate it. I do appreciate Fupalicious' maneuver though. So, let's get on with it. C4 takes, and now bishop to E4. Here's where I make a very, very bad mistake. I just didn't see it. I played the move castles. It looks harmless. Looks harmless. Right, just saying I'm going to castle. I'm going to protect G2. Now, why do I say it's a very bad mistake? Well, the answer is this. Castles, knight takes c4, and if I take on e4, well then, knight takes on e3. And there's a fork, and there's the d4 pawn, and all hell breaks loose. So, if knight takes c4 like I play in the game, black has this move bishop takes g2. And this is brilliant. King takes, queen d5 check. I'll take that knight. Thank you. But that means that bishop takes f8, and then black gets 2 pieces for the rook. That's awesome. That's brilliant. So what would I have done in this situation? Knight takes b6. After c takes b6, king takes g2. Now, after queen d5, king to g1, rook to e8, you're probably thinking, well, why are you saying this is such a bad mistake? Well, the honest answer is that this bishop is bad. It has no future, right? And number two, this knight is very powerful, being able to go to take advantage of these weak light squares. In addition, black also has this open c file. White doesn't, and one day black could go queen to a2 and try to put some pressure on the side, maybe bring the rook down, double up. They're all options. So, well, bishop takes g2 and queen d5, that would have given our friend Fupalicious a very good edge. What happened instead? Well, queen d5 was played first, and I played knight takes b6. Now, what I should have played is played bishop takes e4, and after knight takes e4, knight takes b6, c takes b6, bishop takes, rook takes, and queen to f3. Saying if you ever move your knight to, let's say, fork us, I'm just going to trade queens. Simple as that. So how does this differ from my move order in the game? Well, in my move order, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. Now black gets the option to play queen takes, and that is a very key difference. For example, bishop takes e4 here. After queen takes e4, I get to play bishop takes f8 right away. I don't even have to trade away this knight. This knight is great. It's not being attacked by anything, and it defends this. So it serves as both an attacking and a defensive piece. So that would have been a good edge to playing it in this sort of fashion. But instead, knight takes, queen d5, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and now queen takes. And now I allow our friend Fupalicious to give a check, king to g2, another check, queen to f3, and here rook to c2 with perfect continuation, king h1, and queen takes f3. Now, I have to say, in the game, I really thought queen takes f3 was okay. But now that I think about it, the more precise way to play it is king takes f8, because this queen is going nowhere, right? And first of all, white's pawns are much more vulnerable to attack than black's are. Let's be honest. White does not have the open file. White is under pressure from this queen and this knight. White has very weird looking isolated pawns, unlike the very connected ones that Fupalicious has. So, all in all, I mean, Fupalicious has plenty of compensation for not having the exchange. Queen takes f3, rook takes f3, king takes f8. So at this moment, I have to decide what my game plan is, because it's very hard for me to do something here. And my game plan is based off this. I know that our friend Fupalicious is going to bring the knight in, and try to attack one of these weak pawns. Like, for example, maybe rook d2. Something like that. So what was my game plan? Well, my game plan was to create a weakness in the enemy camp. And I thought the only way to create weakness was by pushing f5 to try to provoke this pawn from becoming a weakness. So rook to e1, and here's the thing. After rook to e1, I invite black to play rook to c4 and go for these two pawns. And the reason I do is because I think I strongly want to play f5. That was my intention at the time, but after I noticed that after rook c4, I try to play f5, our friend Fupalicious would just take, rook takes, and rook take a4. Man, I don't know I am tired, but I am tired. So, yeah. Rook takes a4, and all of a sudden, black has this passed pawn, right? And then this pawn is also weak. These two pawns aren't of much significance yet. So black is coming together. So rook to c4 was actually a very big opportunity for our friend Fupalicious. But I would say king to e7 is arguably the move that gave me the win. Here's why. I got to play f5. This also came with a pin though. King d6, take, and now weakness found. Rook f to e3. King d5, take. Knight to e4, very good. Fupalicious finding the moves. And now I play the move rook takes b7. I had maybe not that much time, but I gambled for it. Now here's what I saw. I saw that our friend Fupalicious could take here, but I go king g1. Our friend Fupalicious could go knight f2. And if I go king to g1, there's maybe a perpetual. And if knight f2, king to g2, there might be knight to d3, going for the rook and at the same time delivering a check. So it gets tricky. So at this point, I briefly considered taking the knight. Right, so rook takes, rook takes b7. But I saw that after king to f3, I saw that, okay, at the very least, this back and forth check could happen and black could get a draw. So I was like, no, I need to get more. So what do? Instead, I said, I could play rook to d1. I could play king to g1 maybe. But I said, you know what? If black is going to play knight here, screw it. Rook takes b7. So here I invited the idea of knight f2. If king g2, knight d3, king f1, knight takes, king takes. This was the endgame that I had in my mind. Rook a2, then rook takes g7. King c5, well, here at the very least I could play rook to g4 and just protect this pawn. And then move my king over and maybe try to slowly bring up the pawns. That was one goal. Another setup I thought was after knight takes g3. And this is what Fupalicious played in the game, but it doesn't lead to anything, unfortunately. King to g1, and knight to e2, well, there is king to f2. There's no more discovered check to threaten this rook. Knight c3, king to f3. My king escapes. Rook to a2, going for the pawn, but rook to d7 and b6. So it's all starting to piece together for me, and for Fupalicious, the message is starting to say, well, it's a little bit late. King to c5, b7, rook to b2, let me just check, king d4, check, bring the other rook in, pin that knight, and use the queen as a deflection. Let me take that knight, and slowly I converted my way to victory with time pressure. So, what did we learn in this game? Well, we learned a lot of things. We learned that it's probably not a good idea to press with b4 because it probably creates more weakness with a5, and after b5 the c5 square is going to be open, and just a lot of weird things. But in the game, Fupalicious did a really good job of maneuvering to the e4 square. Now instead of rook c8, go rook to e8, because there's this difference that now this knight can get freed to e4 once this rook gets on e8. So after rook to c8, however, I get to play c4, bishop to e4, and I make the very silly mistake, castles. What is the move here? Well, it is take, queen d5, right? So the hard thing is, you see that white's bishop is going to attack the rook. But the extremely hard part is getting over that and knowing that you have an even bigger threat. So not only is it about recognizing your opponent's threat, it's also about weighing your threats in relative to your opponent's threats and seeing which one has more value. Knight takes, and I chose an ending where it didn't really provide that much opportunity for me until the move king e7 appeared. And then I had my opportunities, and here knight to f2, knight to d3 was probably the best continuation, but I got my king out, I got the knight, and that was a good game. So there was a lot to pack within this game. I did not have a clear win at all. I mean, I was probably losing like part of the time. So it just goes to show how complicated chess is and really the ups and downs of it. It's not like an all skill game. Sometimes it's because your opponent makes a mistake and you go yeehaw, and sometimes you make a mistake and things just happen. So it's all about curiosity, having fun, working for the game, and just finding things that you enjoy. So thank you, and I will see you next time.